Whitaker, P.O. Box 8250, Atlanta, Georgia. Remember to save all COD charges, send check or money order, or use your credit card.
This is CNN.
Hints that interest rates may go lower still as we measure the impact of already low rates on the U.S. economy.
An armed threat to South America's democratic stronghold, Venezuela withstands a military coup attempt.
Crime in the streets and the emotions it stirs in American voters. I'm Frank Sesno.
I'm Catherine Crier from CNN. This is The World Today.
Thanks for joining us. The lowest interest rates in nearly 20 years could go lower still. Alan Greenspan, chairman of the Federal Reserve, says the current level of rates should be enough to turn the economy around by spring. But he left the door open to further cuts if need be. Greenspan said the economy does not need help from tax cuts and changes proposed by President Bush. But Mr. Bush is pressing ahead, taking his economic game plan on the road again. Senior White House correspondent Charles Bierbauer has more from Orlando, Florida.
The president checked out some high-tech, mostly made-in-America equipment at the National Grocers Association conference. One gadget will electronically streamline credit transactions.
The signature is being checked through the master computer.
So are the president's economic proposals, which he ardently defends.
This will stimulate the economy, and it'll do it without busting the budget further, and it'll do it without raising interest rates.
In fact, back in Washington, Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan allowed interest rates could come down farther than the current 3.5% discount rate.
But assessing the economic outlook at the present time is extraordinarily difficult. We are, of course, continuing to evaluate whether some additional insurance in the way of further monetary ease would be appropriate.
In Orlando, Bush told the grocers, who admitted to being a friendly audience, that his plan will work.
And the professional pessimists tell us America has become weak and disabled, that our economy has fallen and it can't get up. Well, that is just plain bunk.
Bush wants Congress to change business investment rules, create tax credits for first-time home buyers, and lower the capital gains tax rate by March 20th. And he suggested the grocers could help him out.
And from February 8th till February 17th, your congressman will be home for the President's Day recess. And that's a great time for you to go to their hometown offices and tell them to meet the deadline and to pass this plan.
There are, of course, skeptics in Congress.
We must beware that any actions we take to produce a quick recovery from this recession do not impede our efforts to bring about long-term economic growth and stability. And that's clearly a possibility.
The Bush administration is defensive about this economic plan. Spokesman Marlin Fitzwater, referring to the president's tussle Monday with Colorado Governor Roy Romer, said the cheapest trick in the world is to be rude to the president.
I did the right thing yesterday. We need, as governors, to meet with the president on issues on equal ground. He is a CEO of the country. We are CEOs of 50 states.
President Bush says he has no hard feelings about his confrontation with the governor, but the coming confrontation with Congress is going to make any economic recovery plan, be it the president's or Congress's, a hard sell. Charles Bierbauer, CNN, Orlando.
Although the president and many other people are hoping the Fed does cut interest rates even further, rates already are lower than they've been in years. Homeowners know that, and many of them are taking advantage by refinancing their mortgages. CNN's Jamie McIntyre with more on what that means for the economy.
Robert and Joyce Morris of Annapolis, Maryland, are doing what an estimated 1.5 million American homeowners have done in the last year, discovering mortgage financing can be better the second time around.
And the total payments is all your principal and interest over 30 years. It's going to be quite a lot.
By shaving almost 2 percentage points off their mortgage rate, the Morrises will walk away with $30,000 worth of equity they plan to spend.
We have a 10% loan now, and we're going to be getting an 8 1/4. So our monthly payment is not going to be a great deal more than it is right now.
Add the Morris's $30,000 to the money millions of other Americans will save from refinancing, and it adds up to billions of dollars, according to the Mortgage Bankers Association.
We think that by the end of 1992, for example, the monthly payments or the mortgage debt service for American homeowners will be somewhere between $22 and $33 billion less per year than it was at the end of 1990.
But when it comes to economics, what helps one person always seems to hurt another. For example, every dollar that goes into the pocket of the person who lives here in the form of lower monthly house payments could be a dollar out of the pocket of the person who lives next door in the form of lower return on investment. So the Mortgage Bankers Association estimates that while refinancing could pump more than $30 billion into the U.S. economy, the real gain may be more like $5 billion. So while not equivalent to, say, a $20 billion tax cut, economists say the refinancing infusion is nothing to sneeze at.
On balance, we think it is positive for the economy. If for no other reason, then it makes people feel much better about their financial situation.
On Capitol Hill, Fed Chairman Alan Greenspan testified the wave of mortgage refinancing is helping restore consumer confidence by allowing homeowners to repair stretched balance sheets.
Households are not only repaying debt, but are initiating heavy mortgage refinancings that are reducing their debt service burdens as well.
The Morrises are feeling confident enough to spend their windfall on a new addition to their Annapolis, Maryland house.
And we're going to make this whole area into a family room.
J.B. McIntyre, CNN, Washington.
Congress has approved a bill to give an extra 13 weeks of coverage to unemployed people who've used up their jobless benefits. President Bush has promised to sign the legislation. In Los Angeles, though, a snapshot of just how tough the job market is these days. Several thousand job seekers line up, hoping to pass their resumes and job applications to about 20 federal government recruiters. It's not even clear how many jobs are available.
In Latin America, 33 years of democracy constitutes a tradition of which a nation can be proud. In Venezuela early today, that proud tradition almost came to a violent end, and it sent a chill through a hemisphere where democracy is still a fragile thing.
The rattle of machine gun fire and mortars shook Caracas out of its slumber right around midnight, shaking, too, the country's democratic institutions to their very core. Rebel troops tried to storm the presidential palace, led by a tank headed right for the front door. The rebels seized 2 military airports around the capital and took partial control of Maracaibo, the country's second largest city, 400 miles away. 6 hours after the coup attempt began, President Carlos Andrés Pérez went on national television to announce its defeat.
And the loyal forces, that is to say the Venezuelan armed forces, in all their decorum, are in control of the palace, where I'll continue as normal, fulfilling the mandate the Venezuelan people have given me.
Reports vary, but suggest at least 14 people were killed in the coup attempt and 300 rebels arrested. Pérez, who was returning from a trip to Europe, says he believes he was targeted for assassination. The government paraded the man it said masterminded the coup attempt, Commander Hugo Chavez, who told his followers to surrender. President Bush called Pérez in the early hours of the morning.
I just wanted him to know how strongly we feel about the support for him here, support for democracy. He's one of the great democratic leaders in our hemisphere, and to have this outrageous, illegal military coup certainly should be condemned by all countries.
There has been rising unrest in Venezuela, a country rich in oil, but in which the army of poor is growing and falling farther behind all the time. The Venezuelan government acknowledges nearly half the population cannot afford more than 1 meal a day. Still, the coup attempt came as a surprise all around.
We and other governments have heard of discontent in the Venezuelan military. Some of these reports have appeared in the press and have been public. However, neither we nor the Venezuelan government predicted this action.
Nearly all of Latin America's presidents and the European community were quick to condemn the coup attempt. Diplomats say the strong negative reaction should convey to would-be plotters elsewhere in the hemisphere that military intervention is a discredited and unacceptable course of action.
And coming up on The World Today, the widening hole in the ozone layer and scientists' ideas on how to stop it. And we'll take a closer look at why Japanese officials keep making comments that get them in trouble with American workers and why those workers seem so sensitive.
Usually, when you send flowers out of town, you give the order to somebody who takes a cut. Then he passes the order to somebody else who takes a cut. But now there's Flowers Direct that actually lets you speak to a florist in the town where you're sending the flowers. Flowers Direct, or We Cut, is the middleman. Call Flowers Direct now, 1-800-621-2121.
Some days it goes your way. You've got the style, you've got the say. Some days you're out of sight. You've got the dream and you've got the ride.
A great day calls for a great beer. The Michelob beers. With that smooth classic taste you don't find every day.
Michelob some days. Michelob some days. Michelob some days are better than others.
Today, we need to make every drop of oil count. So at BP, we're using advanced drilling techniques. Building oil fields that are smaller, more efficient, more productive than ever. Because that's the kind of thinking it takes to deliver about 10% of America's domestic oil. And to make the most of every drop. BP, the energy to change.
Flu epidemic declared. Entire U.S. affected. Fever, congestion, body aches. What will you do? Get serious medicine. Doctors recommend Theraflu. Theraflu is hot liquid medicine. Strong therapy for flu symptoms. Hot liquid therapy that works fast. What will you do when you get the flu? Doctors recommend Theraflu. Strong therapy for flu symptoms.
Scientists say a new survey shows the ozone layer over populated areas is primed for destruction. But CNN's Al Hinman reports they have no quick solutions to prevent the damage.
The ozone layer in the upper atmosphere serves as a giant sun shield, protecting us from excess exposure to the damaging ultraviolet radiation from the sun. High-flying NASA planes, along with a special satellite, discovered badly damaged areas of the ozone layer over North America and Europe, along with record levels of ozone-destroying chemicals over the northern hemisphere. The impact to people, though, on Earth is not immediate.
You're not going to have people falling over dead in the streets. You're talking about increasing levels of skin cancer and detrimental biological effects.
The increased risk is prompting calls to speed up the elimination of the use of all ozone-destroying chemicals. However, a number of scientists caution restraint, recalling earlier chemical mistakes. For example, the chemicals vital to scores of uses, from air conditioning to aerosols, chlorofluorocarbons, or CFCs. They were touted as the perfect environmental solution to replace more dangerous chemicals more than 3 decades ago. But then scientists discovered that CFCs were helping to destroy the ozone layer. An international agreement calls for a total phase-out of the use of CFCs and other ozone-destroying chemicals by the year 2000. A number of CFC users have already found alternatives.
Even if we were to completely stop production and emission of CFCs today, the amount of CFCs that are currently in the lower atmosphere would continue to supply active chlorine to the upper atmosphere for many decades.
It's that chlorine that contributes to the destruction of the ozone layer. Scientists continue studying the possible long-term effects of damaging Earth's atmosphere. Along with fears about whether it'll be safe to play outside in the years ahead, come the concerns that today's solutions not become tomorrow's problems. Al Hinman, CNN, Atlanta.
The United States is easing its economic embargo against Haiti after concluding that current restrictions have not succeeded in convincing the generals to reinstate civilian government. While the U.S. promises to remain tough on those involved in last fall's coup, the U.S. will allow exports of certain products to the United States. That could mean some 40,000 Haitian jobs. Meanwhile, hundreds of refugees who fled to the U.S. are being taken home. Official repatriation began this weekend. 500 more Haitians who do not qualify for political asylum are expected in Port-au-Prince tomorrow. Some 20,000 Haitians have fled altogether, but the Coast Guard says since repatriation began, fewer refugees are trying to leave.
His own thank you note to the contrary, a former chief of the DEA says he didn't trust Manuel Noriega. The testimony from John Lawn came today during Noriega's drug trial in Miami. The jury heard a letter that Lawn wrote to Noriega in 1987, thanking him for help in a major cocaine bust. But Lawn said his thanks and praise were public relations. He said he was always suspicious of Noriega's true motives.
Japan's prime minister says he was misquoted yesterday in remarks about the American worker and work ethics. Recent weeks have heard the U.S. and Japan exchange critical verbal slaps, despite apparent wishes on both sides for friendly relations. CNN World Affairs correspondent Ralph Begleiter joins us now with an analysis of what's really going on. Ralph, it's quite a diplomatic minefield out there.
Well, Frank, for a nation known for its sensitivity and discretion, Japan's recent record of hostile comments about U.S. workers seems out of character. Prime Minister Kiichi Miyazawa is confronting the fact that Japan's best friend, the United States, is also Japan's biggest competitor, and competition prompts hostility on both sides of the Pacific Ocean.
Prime Minister Miyazawa inserted foot into mouth yet again.
Nearly once a week, the civil dialogue between us is somehow sidetracked by some ignorant expression of Japanese racism or ill-informed worker bashing by a high official of their government. These insults must stop.
Some U.S. officials quietly mention the dark side, that Americans may dislike the Japanese out of racial and cultural bias. At the official level, Japanese-American relations are fine. Japan is cooperating with U.S. efforts to bring peace to the Middle East and with U.S.-sponsored plans for aiding the former Soviet Union. It's the Europeans, not the Japanese, U.S. officials say, who are often more difficult to work with. You don't hear much Europe bashing, but U.S. officials are more worried about Europe, not Japan, keeping American products out. Japan fears a new cheap labor market when the U.S. combines with Canada and Mexico in a North American free trade zone. Although Japan's prime minister is under political pressure at home, it's not pressure to bash the U.S. The U.S. political campaign, however, has sensitivity to Japanese criticism at a peak.
If the protectionist rhetoric and the let's pull our troops home kind of rhetoric is allowed to dominate, I think it will create a psychology on both sides, which in fact may lead to a self-fulfilling prophecy, and we may end up in a confrontation.
It's almost impossible to admit in an election year here in the U.S., but some of what Japanese officials have been saying about the United States has a ring of truth to it. U.S. officials will only say so privately. Frank?
Ralph, is there any public echo to what U.S. officials are saying privately?
Well, there is a public opinion poll that was taken for CNN and Time magazine recently, and it reveals that Miyazawa's comments about American workers actually accurately reflects the Japanese public view. About 61% of the Japanese think U.S. workers don't work as hard. And both Americans and Japanese agree that the Japanese manage their businesses better.
Okay, Ralph Begleiter, thanks very much from the State Department. Catherine.
Frank, turning to one of the major topics of discussion between the United States and Japan, cars. Most automakers are reporting a comeback of sorts in showrooms. January saw a surge of sales compared to the same time last year. Of course, it should be noted sales were dismal. Among U.S. automakers, Ford's car and truck sales climbed more than 7%. GM sales grew by 1.3%, but for Chrysler, sales fell nearly 3%. Honda sales climbed more than 16.5%. Toyota sales up more than 12.5%. But for Nissan, sales were down almost 4%. And ahead on the world today, the president's war on drugs. Senate Democrats call it a losing battle and claim they've got the plan the nation needs to win the fight.
This is ordinary bulk fiber. It's full of grit. This is new Sunrise Smooth Metamucil. The grit is gone because it's triple ground for smoothness. This is ordinary fiber. The grit is definitely not gone. This is new Sunrise Smooth Metamucil, the best mixing, smoothest tasting natural fiber you can buy. The grit is gone. New Sunrise Smooth Metamucil. For regularity, nothing works better, and the grit is gone.
It happens every morning in London, Paris, and Madrid, just as the city starts to stir. In Munich, Manchester, Zurich, and Brussels, just as the business day begins. In Glasgow, Stockholm, Frankfurt, and Milan, as the new day arrives, so do we. American Airlines, with more non-stops from across the U.S. to Europe than any other airline. And beginning June 8th, we'll also arrive in Berlin. So fly the one airline with more non-stops to more of Europe than anyone. American Airlines. Something special to Europe.
Americans are eating healthier than ever, or so they think. Even healthy foods may not be as healthy cooked in oil, margarine, or butter. But all-natural pan no-stick cooking spray adds only 1/10 the fat and calories of those things and keeps food light and delicious. The choice is yours. These or all-natural pan, because how you cook is as important as what you cook.
Prosecutors in Mike Tyson's rape trial have rested their case against the boxer after jurors heard emotional testimony from his accuser's mother and parts of a taped phone call the accuser made to 911 on the night of the alleged assault. In the 911 call, she says, quoting now, "I came out of the bathroom and this person was in his underwear and he just basically kind of did what he wanted to do and kept saying, 'Don't fight me, don't fight me.'" Tyson has pleaded innocent to rape charges, saying the woman consented to sex. Earlier, the judge denied a defense motion for 3 apparent eyewitnesses to be allowed to testify. They claim they saw Tyson and his accuser kissing in Tyson's limousine on the night in question.
Employers may be of more help than doctors in treating alcoholism. That's just one conclusion of a 5-year study of some 200 workers at a New England factory. While the company identified them as problem drinkers, few of them could recall being warned about it by their doctors. Researchers conclude that it may take messages from many sources to get abusers to stop drinking. The study's published in the Journal of American Medical Association.
Looking now at today's developments from the campaign trail, the candidates are making a pitch for more federal matching funds to help pay for their campaigns. George Bush is asking for another $600,000 from the Federal Election Committee. That's down from what he'd sought in previous months, but he's received the most matching funds overall, $3.6 million. His challenger, Patrick Buchanan, wants more than $1 million. Some people apparently aren't taking no for an answer when it comes to Mario Cuomo. Leaders of a group hoping to draft the New York governor say they've mailed pro-Cuomo postcards to every Democratic household in New Hampshire. Cuomo, they say, is the only Democrat capable of pushing George Bush out of the White House in the fall, and they are asking voters to write his name in on the primary ballot.
Senate Democrats say President Bush's war on drugs is a losing battle, and they have their own strategy for the fight. The Bush plan was the target during a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing today, and CNN's Carl Rochelle reports on the political skirmish.
First-time users of crack cocaine increased by 40% in the last year. First-time heroin users went up 75%. This according to Senate Democrats who say the administration's drug strategy isn't working.
Hardcore addiction is rising. New users of crack and heroin are up. There are new trends of LSD abuse. Casual drug abuse is virtually unchanged, with 1 in 20 Americans still using illegal drugs. And it is time, it seems to me, for some new directions in our national policy.
The Democrats have their own proposal to deal with the problem. It calls for a new heroin strategy targeting the Pacific Rim area, the source of much of the heroin being brought to the U.S. A new anti-drug initiative directed at hardcore addiction. It would use $3 billion in savings from a strategic nuclear arms control plan to expand drug treatment, education, and law enforcement. The Democrats would also step up the fight against drug abuse in rural areas where it is growing most rapidly. The immediate target of the proposal was the administration's point man on drugs.
We have made significant strides in reducing the number of drug users and preventing many from using drugs for the first time.
Administration claims were challenged from both sides of the aisle.
Director Martinez, we ought to be frank about this. We are not winning the war on drugs here in the United States, not by a long shot.
As I take a look at the mass of statistics, I'm left in substantial doubt as to what is being accomplished.
Although Congress and the administration disagree on how much success there has been in the drug wars, they both do agree there should be no let-up in the battle. Carl Rochelle, CNN, Washington.
My dad had ulcers, so when my stomach started acting up, I was afraid to go to the doctor. But the pain wouldn't go away, so I went. Was I relieved when my doctor said Mylanta? He said it was indigestion, not an ulcer, and my kind of indigestion called for a strong medicine.
Mylanta is strong medicine, strongly recommended. In fact, Mylanta is the antacid doctors recommend most.
My doctor said Mylanta.
Usually, when you send flowers out of town, you give the order to somebody who takes a cut. Then he passes the order to somebody else who takes a cut. But now there's Flowers Direct that actually lets you speak to a florist in the town where you're sending the flowers. Flowers Direct, or We Cut, is the middleman. Call Flowers Direct now, 1-800-621-2121.
For everyone who's fed up with the political process, CNN is proud to present a continuing series called Democracy in America. We'll explain what candidates say on the campaign trail, analyze their advertising claims, look into their backgrounds, qualifications, and character, and talk with real people about election issues they want to see addressed. Democracy in America, a different kind of coverage you'll see only on CNN.
And when the world today continues on the people's agenda, getting crime off the streets, and computerizing the human voice, speech technology talks its way into the home, office, and hospital. Also, it is the year of the monkey. We'll bring you some of the festivities.
Tylenol users discover a powerful name in aspirin-free pain relief.
It took away my headache. Aspirin-free Anacin worked as well as Tylenol.
Like Tylenol, aspirin-free Anacin is 100% aspirin-free acetaminophen, so it's gentle on your stomach.
Now I have a choice.
The New Yorker. Magazine in the world, probably the best magazine that ever was. See if you agree. Call this number and get 52 weekly issues of The New Yorker for just $25.95. That's $65 off the cover price. Week after week, the quality of The New Yorker speaks for itself. So call 1-800-257-1257 for 52 weekly issues of the best magazine in the world. Yes, The New Yorker.
On CNN tonight, with patriotic fires burning, are Japanese-owned businesses suffering? On Moneyline. Then how will the war of words affect Japanese-American trade relations? In the